Hey, Austin Meyer coming at you from Mike's Playhouse, XForcePC. Last week, I did a rather epic little Xavion video, but it caused a ton of questions on YouTube or whatever that Mike has collected, and he shall ask me now so I can answer them. And ready, go.
Okay, can you use it anywhere other than the United States?
The airports, okay, which is what you see here. See these airports? We have these airports that are in theory global. So you can use airports from a global navigation standpoint. That includes navigation and route. It includes emergency, power off approaches. So it's available globally. However, if you want things like these approach plates are only available for the United States. So if you want to just use Xavion like you would use ForeFlight or something, as something that has like approach plates in it, or for example has like this type of like aviation map in it, then that's United States only. But if you want to use the app as it's really designed to be used, which is as a navigation system with emergency power off guidance, then it's global because our airport database is global. It's just the tweaky little official FAA maps and charts that are United States only.
Okay, and so how would you connect this in the real airplane?
So in the real airplane, we have exactly two levels of use. One, you can have an ADS-B receiver, a weather receiver. They're about as big as a couple decks of playing cards. My favorite ones are the iLevel and the Stratus 3. Now this is where people start saying, what about my Garmin unit or what about my ForeFlight unit? Nope, they'll never work. The Garmin and ForeFlight guys run these closed ecosystems. You would need a weather receiver that has an open format. So it broadcasts the ADS-B data in the GDL90, the GDL90 format. The iLevel receivers all do it. The Stratus 3, wonderful little receiver, that does it. And they broadcast out all the weather and everything by Wi-Fi right to your iPad. And that's how you get weather on your iPad in the cockpit. Now, if you don't have an ADS-B receiver, you can still use Xavion as long as your device has a GPS, which not all of them do. The little Wi-Fi non-cell phone units, in my experience, have not been able to get a GPS signal.
Now.
Okay.
I think it's standard.
In the past, I found that I get out there and for the cell service,
the older ones, right?
Yeah, they couldn't even pick up a dang GPS. Okay, so you think they're standard now? Great. Well, if you have an iPad, I guarantee you that if you do at least have cell service, like on my phone, for example, you can absolutely use it without an ADS-B weather receiver. Like, for example, so this is Xavion on my phone. Maybe, or I guess, are you zoomed in at a decent to see it?
I will.
Okay. Okay, so as you see, the phone just works right here in the office, right? I'm sitting here right in the office, and it works the same in the real airplane. But you won't be getting that ADS-B weather, and it's pretty nice to get that through that ADS-B receiver. And remember that ADS-B weather also includes traffic, and traffic also includes wake turbulence. So you want to have that ADS-B receiver to get the weather and the traffic. But you can still use the app if you don't have that. You just lose a little bit.
Okay, so you have wake turbulence in your app. Does X-Plane simulate wake turbulence?
X-Plane does have wake turbulence, but it's not nearly as good as the wake turbulence in Xavion. So with X-Plane, there's like a line that comes out of the back of every airplane, and if you enter that line, you're in wake turbulence. Xavion is much better. Xavion puts a little wake turbulence data point. It lays like a little egg. Like imagine a little goose walking down the road laying a little egg every few feet behind it. And the wake turbulence moves with the wind and settles. And so yes, X-Plane does have a wake turbulence simulation, but the Xavion simulation is much more accurate, much more realistic in putting where the wake turbulence really goes. And since the question's been asked, that makes it obvious I should improve the wake turbulence model in X-Plane to be as good as it is in Xavion. And absolutely I can do that. And now that you've asked the question, the thoughts crossed my mind. I think I have my work cut out for me for the first half of next week. So sure, I'll do it. I'll put it in X-Plane.
Okay, what about bringing this to Android?
Okay, so the Android programming interface is, frankly, to be very blunt about it, not nearly as good as a programming interface to iOS. It's like the Android system was kind of hacked together, part of it in Java, part of it in C++, and then some stuff has to be done in background threads, then moved to the primary thread to get the two layers to communicate. They were never designed to interact with each other properly. And so the whole Android programming ecosystem is a little bit of a mess compared to iOS. And right now I'm looking for a bang for my buck in my coding hour. And so when I put an hour of effort into this app, I want it to be into making the app better, not trying to stumble around somebody else's poorly designed interface. So for the time being, I can work most efficiently on iOS, and trust me, I have no special love for Apple. I basically view them as tax cheats. But nevertheless, I'm putting my work where I can get work done efficiently, and that happens quite simply on Apple's products.
So another question is, does this support geolocation on an airport diagram so I can see which taxiway I'm currently on?
And the answer is yes, in the United States only. Because in the United States, you can go to plates, choose your plate, and then some airport diagrams, some not all, will have airport diagrams. Let's go to airport diagram, CHS, airport diagram, boom. Okay, so for this airport, say Charleston, we do have airport diagrams, we do have taxiways, and yes, as we taxi along, we will see our little airplane. Well, I guess now we have to try it. Why talk about it when I can do it?
Oh yeah, there it is.
And there it is. So the answer is yes, but only in the United States for airports that have airport diagrams.
Oh, his phone is ringing.
Jay Oliver, the keyboardist for the Eagles. I'm working on a video with him about how it's illegal to buy Teslas. Hang on. Okay, that was the phone there. Sorry, I had to break for a second. I wish Mike had left the camera recording for that phone call because it's kind of cool. So let me tell you what it was about. I'll give you a little bit of inside gossip here. I drive a Tesla Model 3 Performance Edition. The thing does 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. It doesn't shift gears. It doesn't use gas. It has the lowest probability of injury of any car in the history of cars. And it handles exactly like a BMW. I've driven all the new sport BMWs. The Tesla Model 3 handles just like all of them. And you can't buy one in the state of South Carolina. There's no Tesla showrooms. Can you figure out why, Mike? Why is that?
All the automobile dealers are in a little club together, and that club has a very loud voice, and then that voice goes and lobbies against allowing Tesla to be in South Carolina because that's competition. Why would you want competition from a superior product?
Exactly, that's it. The car dealers associations band together. They go to the legislature. They say, it'd be a lot more convenient for us if Tesla wasn't allowed in the state. And in South Carolina, Connecticut, Michigan, Texas, and about another half dozen states as well, it is literally illegal for Tesla to show a car. My favorite one is in Michigan. The president of General Motors officially and in public advocated for a law in Michigan that made it illegal for Tesla to give test drives in Michigan. What does that tell you about Teslas compared to everything else GM makes?
Well, he's afraid as soon as you ride in one, you're going to be sold.
You're never going back. And trust me, if you drive a Tesla, you're never going back. And so I'm going to make a video showing what it's like to own a Tesla and then how the car dealers and the lobbyists and the lawmakers make it illegal for you to find out by making it illegal for Tesla to sell cars in your state. And they limit the number of outlets, if you will, that Tesla is allowed to have in about another 10 states. Like in some states, there's literally laws saying Tesla's only allowed to sell in 2 locations in the state. Like literally. I mean, it's straight up communism. It's simply, you're allowed to do business if you bribe the government enough. Now, every now and again, you'll hear about fires. Teslas, they catch on fire. How many times have Teslas caught on fire? You look at YouTube.
I read like one story, I think, of that ever happening.
Yeah, it caught on fire.
After, I think it was an accident.
And then the next year, there was another one that caught on fire. I think almost one Tesla catches on fire every year. It's pretty disturbing, isn't it?
It's horrible.
Yeah. How many gasoline cars catch on fire every year? Is it one?
Well, someone told me earlier it was 150,000.
Yeah, it's about 150,000. It's 150,000 gasoline car fires per year. 150,000 a year. Teslas, about one a year. And if you look at the media, all you hear about is the Teslas. Why would that be?
Well, the media is, when you watch the local news here, all it is car ads.
It's just car dealer ads. Car dealers are like keeping the media on life support. And so the media, they don't talk about the 150,000 fires from fuel in the gas burning cars. They talk about one a year that happens in Tesla because Tesla doesn't bribe them with an ongoing stream of advertisements. So I'm making a video about this that'll explain this, and I'm having Jay Oliver do the soundtrack for me zipping around in a Tesla for this video, which will be pretty damn fun. So anyway, okay, let's get back to work. It's time to get back to work with Xavion.
So in using it connected to X-Plane 11, do the stats for the plane automatically jump over to Xavion, or do you have to type them in?
All right, so the question is, do the stats automatically come, the aircraft statistics, performance automatically come to Xavion? And the answer is no, you have to do it yourself. You do it yourself in the sim, exactly like you do it yourself in the real airplane.
Well, that's probably a good thing because that's part of the practice.
Right, it's part of the practice, and it's fun, and it's easy. We just go to Craft Setup in Xavion, and look, we slide our finger to enter our V-speeds. VSO is the stall speed with flaps down. For your airplane, look it up. VNE, your maximum speed, 256, and then best glide speed, 110 knots in this airplane. And so these are all speeds that are in the pilot's operating handbook for every airplane. Once you've entered all these speeds, which are right out of the pilot's operating handbook, there are a grand total of 3 numbers that you have to enter to get Xavion to do all your approaches. And in this case, it simply tells you what they are. Once you've entered the V-speeds, it says here, power idle, gliding config, prop redline, stabilized at 165 knots, and enter your vertical speed. Okay, fine. Power at idle, gliding configuration, that's flaps and gear up, and stabilized at 165 knots. This is the so-called worst glide. This is where you're really kind of diving to get a bad
And these
speed.
numbers were presented based on the stuff you put
Exactly.
in the boxes above?
Right. You put in the V-speeds above, and once it knows the speed kind of envelope of the airplane, it just tells you to go to various different speeds and configurations and enter the vertical speed. Nothing could be easier. So I'm just going to stabilize the airplane here at about 165 knots. If you want to fly Xavion in an X-plane, do it in the sim. If you want to fly Xavion in the real airplane, just do this in the real airplane. All you're doing is pulling the power to idle and descending and measuring the vertical speed. It's completely safe and completely easy. Okay, so I'm doing about 165 knots here. I'm at idle. I'm going about 2,400 feet a minute. Boom, boom, boom. Enter 2,400. Power idle, gliding configuration. Prop feathered 110 knots. Okay, that's the second of 3. So I feather the prop, and I'm going to set it up for 110 knots, and I'm just going to note the vertical speed here right on the heads-up display. And I would do this in the real airplane. There's no problem with doing this in the real plane.
And what if you don't have a prop that's variable?
Then you just go to 165 knots for the top one and 110 knots for the bottom, because you notice the speed also varies. So when I say, prop feathered, prop fixed, gear up, gear down, flaps up, flaps down, just set what you got, right? Because that's what you're going to do in the real airplane. And if you don't have a prop or gear or flaps to play with, fine, don't worry about it. Just go to the speeds and enter the vertical speed, because that's what you're going to do when the engine quits. Idle, landing configuration, prop cruise at 79 knots. Once we've done that, we'll have entered the 3 vertical speeds that Xavion needs to do your power off approaches. And then enter that, and there you go. Now you've set it up. That's it. That's how you set up the glides. Well, we just entered our best glide, our worst glide, and our landing configuration glide. The approach then will be designed at halfway between the best and worst glide. And with the approach designed halfway between the best and worst glide, that's the widest possible margin for error.
So I have a question, which is probably going to spawn you having to do some work.
Okay.
What if you fly multiple planes and you don't want to have to enter this every single time?
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Say multiple planes?
Craft select. Add new aircraft. And then you can go blah, 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 blah. Okay, call it that. And there you go. It's an airplane.
Okay,
and then
so
you can delete it.
multiple aircraft
Yeah.
already.
Yeah, you can have all the airplanes you well, I mean, it's up to like 20. You can say like 20 different planes or something like that, which is more than enough for anyone.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So it says, can I update the nav data for Xavion?
So Xavion is FAA certified data. We get it from Seattle Avionics. And so when you get the app, you can download it from the App Store for free, just so you can play with it. But before it has all the airport data in it, you pay $10 a month or $100 a year, and then every 30 days you get the airports. And then for an additional $150 a year, you can get those charts and approach plates I was showing you for the United States, which is not necessary to use the app. It just lets you have the same things you look for in ForeFlight and all the other mapping apps, where you have the old-fashioned map displayed on an iPad, basically.
Okay. What about, and I know you touched on this in the first video, but is it legal to use it in the real airplane?
Okay, is it legal to use this in the real airplane? The answer is absolutely yes. Anything that you bring into the airplane, you can use. It doesn't have to be certified because it's not attached to the airplane, and yet you can use it. Now, officially, you are using it for reference, not as primary navigation. However, the last time I took an instrument currency check, I walked right up to the instructor, and I said, I want to take the entire instrument currency check on an iPad, and I don't want to use my Garmin's. And he said, the rules are simple. We care that you do it, not how you do it. You want to take the IPC on an iPad? Go. And I did, and it was great. It was absolutely fun. It was one of the greatest 2 hours of my life, watching me take all this work and exercise it in a certified environment where no failure was accepted.
So here's a comment. And then once you become spoiled by this and your iPad runs out of batteries or dies, you will be screwed.
I would say that point is one of the critical questions of our time in aviation, because right now the backup systems, the iPads are running circles around the certified and installed systems.
Well, they don't have to go through all that certification.
Right, because they bypass government certification, they wind up being better, not worse. What that means is you're actually learning how to fly 2 airplanes, aren't you? To fly one airplane, you're learning how to fly 2. The iPad airplane and the 1950 airplane. And so it is twice as hard. You do have to learn twice as much. And because that's when we're in a transition period right now from the past to the future. And the only way to survive the transition safely is to know how to use both systems during that transition. So now is a slightly tricky time to be a pilot, because to do the job right, you need to know both systems.
So how did you not notice your airspeed was 0 when you took off that time?
Oh, that's a great question. And here it is. In the Lancer Evolution, and as a Pratt & Whitney PT6A-42 engine, the best technology that 1965 had to offer, if you push the throttle all the way forward in that airplane, you will destroy the engine by the time the throttle has made it to the stop. What you do in that airplane is you gradually advance the power as all the needles come up, but you don't let them exceed the critical values. And in fact, if you go up over about 55% power on that engine for takeoff in the airplane, once the airplane lifts off, it'll start to yaw and roll off to the left, and you won't have enough rudder authority to stop the yaw. When you're light, you'll fly at a very low speed. When you're heavy, you'll fly at a very high speed. And the weight of a Lancer Evolution varies tremendously depending on how far you're going to go, because that's what determines how much fuel you have on board. And so I'm taking the long way around saying is the Lancer Evolution flies at completely different speeds depending on whether it's heavy or light. And it will destroy itself if you just push the throttle to the pedal to the metal for takeoff. As a result, I never look at the speed for takeoff. I'm trying to keep the thing centered on the runway, even though the P factor is trying to pull me off to the left side every time, while I set the throttle to not go up over my maximum takeoff torque. And so I'm all about runway centerline and setting torque. Airspeed, it's like not even in the picture compared to the two things that I just mentioned. It's always runway centerline and engine instruments is where my attention is focused, without exception.
What good is the automatic 3-degree glide slope for your instrument approach when altitudes are always assigned for IFR flying?
The altitudes are assigned by the air traffic controller until you are cleared for the approach. At the moment you are cleared for the approach, the air traffic controller is no longer assigning you altitudes. Now you are going to predefined altitudes that are defined for the approach. Each fix is lower than the one that comes before as you descend. The next question is, how quickly should you descend to get from one fix to the next one down? My answer is the steepest of 3 degrees or the published descent angle between fixes in case you have to come down steeper. This is the descent that gets you from fix to fix in the most standard possible descent profiles while coming down more steeply if necessary to make the next fix.
Okay, switching gears, is it possible to use Xavion on a tablet in VR?
Oh, can we use Xavion in VR? And the answer is no, because I would have to take all of the code from this iOS iPad and port it into X-Plane, and that is a thing where it would receive a small amount of use, a small amount of benefit, but would be a huge amount of code. In other words, the cost benefit is simply not there.
All right, that is all the questions.
Okay.
If there's anything else you want to
Yeah, there is one other thing. So I'm going to show you the 3D airspace real quick. We'll just do this in the same video, tacking on to the end, because I don't know if this is big enough to justify a video. So anybody that's read the Gleim Red books on how to fly remembers the kind of crude drawings of the upside-down wedding cake that forms airspace. And we look at maps, we're so used to seeing things like this, where we see the airspace, but notice you can't tell the altitude from this. And you can zoom in real close. Yeah, why don't you zoom in on the iPad for this one, Mike? You can zoom in close and you can say, oh, look, it goes from surface to 4,000 feet. But it's so easy to miss those numbers. And so I believe what we really need is a way to see the airspace in 3 dimensions. And so I coded it for Xavion. And you can see,
is that all that pink stuff?
Yeah, see, look, you see this thing up in front of us? It looks like a big semi-transparent box, and it's suddenly obvious just from looking how to go under it and how to go over it.
So would this prevent you from flying too close to, let's say, Camp David?
Exactly, yes, because a rendering will show where it is, including altitude, and if you don't enter the area that you see in 3D, well, it's like, just imagine this. Your goal is to walk across the room without walking into a fish tank. So you frost the glass of the fish tank or color the glass of the fish tank, and it's going to be awful hard to not see it. And that's exactly what we're doing here.
What about TFRs? That's not possible, right?
You currently no, but of course it could be someday. Someday TFRs could be part of the ADS-B stream. I think they're not right now, but they could be, and then boom, they would pop up and you'd see them. And so this, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the first time in history any avionics has ever actually shown the airspace in 3D in an airplane. I Googled like crazy. I couldn't find any case of actual 3D airspace in the cockpit of a real airplane before. But now we have it
there. You just put like a chain link fence around it.
Yeah, so it's got a chain link fence around it. And so all you do, if you don't feel like busting airspace, is just don't fly through the middle of the chain link fence. And now, for the first time that I know of, we have 3-dimensional airspace. I was flying my airplane up to Michigan the other day from South Carolina, and I had this running. And I think it was the first time that I know of that anyone's watched airspace pass by in 3D as they flew.
Huh.
So anyway, it's a new feature. It's starting in Xavion 2.27, but it'll probably be approved before I'm done editing this video. So if you have Xavion 2.27 or later, then you'll have this in the USA, which is where I have the airspace.